Hello, everyone, and welcome to our December Mentor Talks. My name is Maria Iliadis, and I'll be your host today from the Office of Alumni Affairs in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, also known as ECA, at the U.S. Department of State. Our office opens the door to the million-strong Exchange Alumni Network, professional development, and grant opportunities for alumni of U.S. government educational and cultural exchange programs. Mentor Talks is the chance for you to connect with incredible exchange alumni leaders, hear their stories, and get their career advice. Like our guest today, Leland Lazarus, who I'm very excited to have join on. I see he's in the background, so I'm going to invite him on in a moment. But while we wait for him, why don't all of you tell me where you're tuning in from today? And also, be sure during our talk to drop questions into the chat because we will be live, and so Leland will have a chance to answer your questions about building community and building an international career. So I'm seeing a lot of people coming on. I really love it. Excited. Hello. We have Junwee2222. Hello over there. Where are you tuning in from? Tell us today. I know we have people here from all over the world. I see one of my colleagues has joined. Hello, Emily. Very, very exciting. I think we're gonna have a good talk today. Hello, If We Wayne One. I love that. I love the name. And Jacqueline. It's gonna be really great today. So I think we're gonna invite on our guest. I think we're ready. But like I said, please drop your questions in the chat. And we'll get to it during our talk. So, we have someone from Korea. I love that. That's great. Okay, so we've got some people staying up very late for this conversation. I really appreciate that. Okay, and I am going to give us just a moment. Hang on, guys. I think Leland has joined. Hello, can you hear me?
Maria, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Amazing. I love it. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. We're
Great.
just a couple days out before Christmas, and I
Yeah.
love the Christmas season.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I know some people don't like Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You," but as soon as Thanksgiving is done, I put that thing on repeat for days.
I'm with you. I'm one of those who does not want to put the Christmas music on until after Thanksgiving. People think I'm a little extreme, but I'm like, let's appreciate the season and then we can blast it as many times as we want. And after that, I'm done. I'm good. But as you can see, I think this doesn't look like a home of a Christmas hitter or a holiday
Right,
hitter, you
right.
know?
I think the only thing we need to round it out is probably some eggnog from both of us.
Some eggnog, maybe some warm tea, a fire actually in that fireplace, and maybe to round it out for our other, guests around the world, a few of the other holidays happening. Like I know Hanukkah this year is coinciding with Christmas.
Yeah.
Kwanzaa is also around the same time. Then we've got New Year's. So we've got a lot of holidays coming up, which is honestly really nice. And it's nice to be able to be festive at this time of year and take a moment to pause and think about, what we've been doing this past year.
Well, happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you. Yes. Happy holidays to everyone in the audience. So I know Leland asked me not to do a very long intro, but I'm afraid I have to do it because he is very accomplished. And aside from all of you who already know him, I want the rest of you to get to know him and why he's so incredible, aside from being an exchange alumni, because all of our exchange alumni are incredible. So I'm going to do the intro. Okay, Leland, and then we'll talk. So Leland Lazarus is the Associate Director of National Security at the Florida International University's Jack D. Gordon Institute of Public Policy, and he's a team member on the Council of Foreign Relations. He has also served as a Foreign Service Officer at the U.S. Department of State in Barbados and China. He was a Pickering Fellow serving at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and he was on the China desk in Washington, D.C. Before his current role, he worked as the special assistant and speechwriter to the commander of the U.S. Southern Command. But beyond all of these professional accolades and achievements, Leland is above all an expert in building community and connections. He is a Fulbright exchange alumni who spent his international exchange year in Panama. And now he's on the Fulbright board of directors, and he's driven the Fulbright Youth Summit to new success in its third year, creating connections and community wherever he goes. So this is why I am super excited to talk to Leland today. See, that wasn't so bad as an intro.
Yeah,
So
but I always
Leland,
cringe. I always
you always
cringe,
cringe. You're like, I don't want to hear
Yeah.
about myself. Well, I mean, I think those are the best leaders who don't want to hear about themselves and don't actually want to lead. But we're going to get into it. I am very excited to welcome you officially to Mentor Talks.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I think the most important piece of all of it is I'm also a proud father and a husband. So we've got a 21-month-year-old at home, and his name is Luca, and he's running around destroying things, and he's the most lovable little being ever. So
And I
it's
bet
the
he
best
can't
Christmas
wait
gift.
to tear into all of the wrapping paper on Christmas.
He already has.
Oh, okay. All right. So he's already gotten started. Oh, love that. Yeah, and we'll get to that of talking about, all aspects of your identity and things you bring into work. So, like I've said, you have a super interesting background. And so you've not only worked as a foreign service officer at the US Department of State, you've worked for the Department of Defense, you've brought your expertise in China and Latin America through all of your jobs. Could you walk me through your career path and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I would say that it all starts with Jackie Chan.
Hmm.
And for those who are interested in martial arts or whatnot, when I was little, I grew up watching, Enter the Dragon or Rush Hour and any of these other Jackie Chan movies. And it was actually through there that I got the bug to be interested in Chinese culture and history and then eventually language. Um, then you fast forward to college, and I started college in 2008 at Brown University. And at that time, of course, Beijing had just hosted the Summer Olympics, and the world was about to enter into the global financial crisis. And I'll never forget that in my freshman class, it was an international relations class, there was a professor who said, hey, the PRC is going to become the United States' greatest competitor. And so you might uh, behoove you to start now to learn about your competitor. There's a Chinese saying, 知己知彼，百战不殆, which is if you know yourself and you know your competitor, then you will not lose 100 battles, right? And so I took that to heart, um, doubled down and started studying Chinese history and language and culture throughout college. I combined that with my personal interests in Latin America because my family comes from Panama. And so I'd never had a chance to actually spend significant time in the country of my heritage. And so my senior thesis was actually analyzing China's growing influence in Latin America and using Panama as a case study. That was all the way back in 2011, 2012, right, when Panama was still diplomatic allies with Taiwan. So it was really, really interesting time. And that interest ended up getting me a Fulbright afterwards, and then eventually a Pickering Fellowship to enter into the Foreign Service. Served in the State Department, served in the Department of Defense, and now really have brought it all together in academia, where I'm teaching U.S.-China relations, Chinese foreign policy, China-Latin America relations here in Miami.
Wow. I love how prescient your career path was. You saw something within a class and you said, "Oh, hey, that's actually a big part of the future and what's going on."
Yeah, but it seems prescient only after the fact,
Yeah.
right? Because I was just thinking about this on the drive here, that at that time the U.S. was still focused on the global war on terror, right? And surely, the Obama administration was talking about the pivot to Asia, but you know, very short into Obama's administration, Iraq, Afghanistan kind of pushed the administration back to focus on the Middle East. And so there's still a whole lot of people focused on learning Arabic, right? Getting the Middle East history and whatnot, or Middle East experience. And so for me, at that time, focusing on China, you were kind of in the minority.
Hmm.
Learning Chinese. I remember I was like in my Chinese class, and I was the only person of color,
Hmm.
definitely, and then also I think one of the only just Americans that did not have Chinese descent or Chinese ancestry in my class, right? You fast forward to today, and now a lot of people are focusing on starting to study Chinese, studying the U.S.-China relationship, and so it's been really interesting to sort of see that shift over the years of my career.
Yeah, I mean, it must have taken a lot too for you to say, no, this is actually important to stick with this when other people, it sounds like you were going a bit against a trend or not even going towards the direction of a trend.
That's a good point. I think the hardest part is when people have a certain view of what a China expert or someone interested in China should look like, right?
Mm,
And so when you're in certain rooms and you realize that, still to this day, right, the U.S. China space is dominated by, um, mostly white males, right?
mm,
And so to be able to really carve out that space to say no, um, um, there is an opportunity for um, diverse voices in the U.S. China space. It's really important, really important.
completely. And in
Mhm.
foreign policy in general, it's important
Absolutely.
to have those different voices and perspectives in the room.
Right, and to make sure
Um,
that our U.S. diplomats representing us
yeah,
abroad really look and reflect the wonderful diversity that we have.
right, exactly. Because it is, the US is unique in having a very diverse country, a very, so many different ethnicities, so many different languages, you know, really, and also socioeconomically of having all of that represented, because that's another aspect of it. So that's also huge. Yeah. So speaking of the Foreign Service, I know a big part of your story also comes from being in the Foreign Service, but then also eventually deciding to leave it. So why did you decide to leave? And, I'll have like a follow-up question on this, basically about, what this means, and reflecting back to the audience about this of a bigger question.
Well, I think first and foremost, uh, having served in the Foreign Service was and has continued to be in my mind an honor of a lifetime, right? And I still have a lot of former colleagues who are still really really close friends wherever they are in the world. And if you're online or you listen to this afterwards, thank you guys for your service, and love you guys wherever you are. I had a great time, absolutely great time serving in the Foreign Service. Um, what I learned though is that kind of career um, requires a certain amount of sacrifice on that person's spouse, right? And so even the foreign service officers who are still friends today, their spouses are either also foreign service officers, right? Tandem couples. They either have a job where they can work remotely, or they are fortunate to have found a job at the embassy or at the consulate, right, working in one of the offices. For my context, the love of my life, my wife, she is a doctor, and she had a career that really didn't make it amenable for her to be able to kind of travel around with me. And so to put that into perspective, when I was in China, she was still finishing up her medical degree, and so we were literally apart, half a world away from each other for quite a few years. And I think that stunted our ability to just grow in our marriage, but then also to expand our family, right? Um, and so that partnered with the fact that the pandemic really upended everything. After my time serving in China, my tour after that was actually in Barbados. Um, I know, horrible, a horrible next post. The
Terrible,
sunshine, the
right?
beaches, the just the incredible people there in the Caribbean. Um, it was a lot easier when I moved from China to the Caribbean to see her, because then she moved from Michigan to Miami at the time. But then the COVID happened, right? And international travel stopped, and there was so much uncertainty there. And so all that forced us to have a real deep conversation about the career path, and ultimately I decided to choose a different path, one that allowed me to be in the U.S. to be with her, and now we have our 21-month-old son. So we did something right ultimately.
Thank you for sharing that story because I think a lot of times we don't acknowledge the real personal end of what comes into our careers. And it's just as important as, honoring the gifts that we have and using them. And we don't get to talk about it enough. So Leland, thank you for being that vulnerable and talking about that. One could say you've ended up in a pretty good place, even though you've left the foreign service, right?
Yeah, it was basically diplomacy by other means.
Yeah.
So after leaving the Foreign Service, I ended up transitioning to the Department of Defense, right? And so for those who might not necessarily know the details about DoD or the Department of Defense, there are various geographic commands all around the world, right? So there's the Indo-Pacific Command, there's African Command, Euro Command. I worked for U.S. Southern Command, which was in charge of U.S. military and humanitarian assistance throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And I had the opportunity to serve as the special assistant and the speechwriter to two combatant commanders, right, the leaders of U.S. Southern Command, and really help them to flesh out their counter PRC strategy within Latin America. For those who might be focusing on this or following this, China's engagement in Latin America has really ballooned in the past few decades. They're a main trading partner for most of South America. There was the inauguration of this big megaport, a $3.5 billion megaport in Peru that was just inaugurated in APEC. And so, I was focused on really helping the U.S. develop a strategy to just be a partner of choice for Latin America and the Caribbean. So even though it was a military command, it involved a lot of diplomacy, right? Military diplomacy. How are we helping to be the best partner to our local partners by providing trading or helping them to come to the United States and do international military training? Like think of it like Fulbright or IVLP for partner nation militaries, right? And then other soft power projects like during the height of the pandemic, U.S. Southern Command was the lead in helping to set up um, uh, humanitarian tents so that they can do sort of makeshift hospitals in order to help to do COVID testing and field hospitals and things like that. That's the idea that instead of bullets and guns, we can be a better partner with handshakes and smiles.
Hmm. Yeah. That's another way of, yeah, you're right. It's another way of diplomacy.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears because I promised we'd talk about community and also you're very good at building it up. Um, so I want to talk about your involvement with the Fulbright community
Yeah.
as a member of the board of directors. So 3 years ago, you told me you set a goal for yourself when you joined to bring together all the members of the wider Fulbright community. Um, and for our audience, that means not just the Fulbright board and the Fulbright Exchange alumni who are part of our network, but also ECA, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, our implementing partners who carry out the many international exchange programs that we have in the US and all around the world, and the Fulbright affinity groups that have organically sprung up. So Leland, you've had previous experience bringing together alumni across programs with a Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund grant project called Pathways to Global Citizenship that was funded by our office. Why did you set bringing together the Fulbright community as your goal when you joined the board? And what advice do you have for others who want to build community as well?
Well, let me first start off by going back to my Fulbright experience. I'd mentioned before that my family comes from Panama, and I had always yearned to spend significant time in the country of my heritage. And the Fulbright scholarship provided me that once in a lifetime opportunity. So I taught English at the Universidad de Panama, made lifelong friendships, uh, ended up meeting family members that I had never met before, and really got a chance to connect again. It was like a visceral um, uh, connection to that culture and heritage that I didn't have before. And my time during Fulbright allowed me to know about the Foreign Service, about international diplomacy, which then set me on my whole career path from there. So I've always been so grateful for that Fulbright experience because it absolutely changed my life. And for that reason, I've always wanted to give back to the Fulbright community, helping to volunteer and serve. And 3 years ago, I was afforded the opportunity to now serve on the national board of directors of the Fulbright Association, which is the alumni association for Fulbrighters in the U.S. Um, what I learned very quickly when I joined the board was that the Fulbright ecosystem is very fractured. You've got us, the alumni associations, but then you've got, of course, the Fulbright program itself in the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. You've got the Institute of International Education, IIE, right, which is the implementing partner. You've got the affinity groups that have popped up on social media and have become very, very strong and independent organizations in and of themselves. Shout out to any of those who are listening. But Fulbright Noir for African American Fulbrighters, Fulbright Latinx, Fulbright Prism for LGBTQ, and Lotus for Asian Americans, and so many others. And so we were all doing great things, but it wasn't necessarily in tandem. And so one of my mission sets was to just build trust between all the different stakeholders in that ecosystem. Really hear what they're thinking about, what are their aspirations, what are some areas in which we can collaborate, and ultimately, what we were able to really do together was to start the very first Fulbright Youth Summit, and we did that last year in Denver, Colorado, where we all joined forces. We had a planning committee. We ended up inviting over 100 high school students from diverse backgrounds throughout the Denver area, and we built out a whole afternoon program for them where they got exposed to not just Fulbright, but also Boren, CLS, um, uh, Pickering and Wrangell, all these different exchange programs that they could take advantage of either in high school, in college, or beyond. And it was a really incredible and life-changing program for them. And it was such a success, right, through the CDAF grant. It was such a success that then we applied again this year, and we got it, and we did it again back in October in DC. And our idea is to keep this uh, latest work of partners in this space to continue to do youth summits in cities around the country, and then maybe even internationally. We're willing to partner with Fulbright and other exchange alumni associations and other partners in the world. Pakistan, I see online, and others. We can totally talk offline about how we can really internationalize a program like this.
That would be amazing. I remember when we were talking about this, you said one of the very specific things you said that led to the success of putting this all together, I mean, you've now done it twice, was getting community
Yeah.
buy-in. So what does that look like? How do we have this vision, we see maybe in our own communities, hey, we've got all these different groups that are basically doing the same things, but how much more better would be if we joined forces and did things together? So how did you get that buy-in? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to lift up some partners who were also leaders in the forefront of this. So first of all, when Kuni Seant, she has been my co-lead in ideating and building the team and executing the youth summit. So shout out to Wenkuni, who's also a Fulbright alum, who did her Fulbright in Senegal. And then also Matthew Holloway, who's based in California. He actually did a Fulbright in Panama several years after I did. And he's also sort of a leader in community building. And he had suggested to me, the first thing you need to do is just just build trust with the affinity groups, right? I understand if, from the perspective of an affinity group leader, being approached by the Fulbright Association, it may seem as if, hey, are they trying to take us over? Are they what's their ulterior motive? And um, basically, what we ended up doing was just to have a series of conversations, listening sessions, to hear, hey, what are some of the key things that you would like to do, or you would like to see us help you guys do. They identified mentorship. You know, we now have a mentorship program. We're helping them with mentorship programs that they've already built out organically. We help to amplify programs and events that they um, organize, and then also we use a portion of the grant in order to help to fund the leaders' travel to participate in the youth summit as leaders, as facilitators, um, and then also to attend our Fulbright National Conference, right? And so it's really, talking the talk, but then also walking the walk in terms of providing resources, providing time, and providing funding for their projects as well. And I think as a result of that, we have built a super power team. I keep on calling them the Fulbright Avengers, because it's literally been the leaders of all the affinity groups, plus a rep of IIE, plus some international alumni leaders who are all part of this group, this consortium now. And I've been looking back as we close out 2024. I'm looking back at what are some of the programs that I was really proud about this year, and by far the youth summit is by far the best and most proud thing that we've done this year.
Fabulous.
Um,
So we're starting to run out of time, and I have two questions left for you. So the
mhm.
first one is, what drives you to create community?
The fact that we can be, this might sound cliche, right? But we're always um, stronger together, right? And I think I've seen again through the Fulbright example of a lot of well-meaning small projects, but if we're able to combine our resources together, there's really no limit to what we can do.
I don't think that's cliche at all. I think that's a great answer, and I think it's true. So my last question for you,
Mhm.
Leland, before we go, is what is your top tip for those who want to create community?
Listen, listen a lot more than uh, speaking. Um, as I mentioned before, you know, we don't have all the answers. A lot of the creativity that the Fulbright Summit ended up having, the Fulbright Youth Summit ended up having, came organically from the leaders themselves, right? And so, really eating a lot of humble pie to say, I don't have all the answers. The Fulbright Association certainly doesn't have all the answers. We're an older, by the organization's years, right? We're an older organization, and we don't have a monopoly on creative ideas. And so being able to actually listen and then implement those, it's been great. If I can add one specific example of that,
Sure.
this year's Youth Summit, we started off with a traditional panel discussion, right, where we had different alums of different exchange programs share their stories. It was like 45 minutes with audience Q&A. But we also had another activity, which again was organic from a leader from our local Fulbright chapter in Louisiana and our local Fulbright chapter in for Noir, African Americans. So they led this, they co-led this, where they had the students go to various easels around the room, and there were different words in it: climate change, politics, diplomacy. and so on and so forth. And they needed to really think through those words. How could they and their communities add positively to those issues? And then they needed to think of how can they visually um, convey that. And what came of that was these incredible artworks, these easels full of artwork that really depicted, the rise of AI in education, right, and the need for increased diplomacy when we have such conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, and it was just so beautiful, and it was a out of the box but really meaningful activity to really connect the local to the global and the global to the local.
I love that example. And I love how we've talked about so many different things today. Leland, thank you so much for taking out time right before the holidays to appear on the show. I also want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's watched this today and asked questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. If you want to learn more about exchange programs that are available, visit the ECA page. It's exchanges.state.gov to learn more about what you're eligible for and what the requirements are. So if you're interested in learning about more about awesome exchange alumni like Leland, you can visit our website at alumni.state.gov and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And Leland, if people want to get in touch with you, say about partnerships, where should they reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. Add me on Instagram. I'm just at Leland Lazarus. You can also just reach out to me via LinkedIn, and really excited about partnering with other international exchange alumni on Youth Summit and other areas of collaboration.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you again, Leland. Happy holidays. Thank you, everyone
Happy
else, for
holidays.
watching. Yes, happy holidays. Thank you, everyone else, for watching. And we'll see you soon on our next Mentor Talks in 2025. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.